Speaking of reliability, a podcast with good friends talking with you about reliability engineering topics. Welcome to Speaking of Reliability. This is Fred Schenkelberg.
And this is Carl Carlson.
Hey, Carl. I remember I gave you a hard time for being on the board of your condo association at one time, and then you had a hurricane and you're dealing with it remotely.
Yes.
And today's conversation, you were asking me about fire and fire prevention out in California. I think we've got some pretty good sized fires going as we speak. But it brought up a topic because I actually got on the board here. I follow in your lead, of course, Carl.
Oh, Fred.
I don't know if you knew that or not.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been a couple of months, and maybe it's better to have in person with a beer for some of the stories around this. But one of the things that I did 10 years ago when I was on the board for a year was do a capital improvement plan and saying, all right, here's a process we can use to figure out what's important and urgent and what's important and schedule accordingly with the limited funds we have for either repairing or replacing or improving things in the park. And so, I mean, there's bulk of our budget is paying for the processing of purifying water and distributing it and stuff like that. That's our main business, is delivering water and to the community and the roads and a handful of other things. Yet with any organization, there is, we need to do maintenance. We need to replace this. We need to upgrade this. We need to fix that. We need to improve that, stuff like that. So we have a portion of our budget to do that each year. And so way back then, I asked the question about the valves in the main distribution system, because it came up shortly after I got involved with, there was a leak someplace and they couldn't find the valve to isolate that leak and then execute the repairs. So they ended up shutting down the water for the whole system for the day, which is kind of not a good practice because it really muddies up the water inside the system for a while. And I said, well, when was the last time we exercised the valves? And folks that deal with, big systems and big valves know that if you don't turn them once in a while, they are very likely not to actually turn when you need them to. And so, right. And it was like blank stares. It was like, you have to do that? Like, come on. And so I said, all right, we need to replace these valves. They're about $3,000 a shot. And at that time, now it's about $6,000 a valve. And just replace them because they're at or beyond their expected lifetime. We haven't been exercising them. We know from your first-hand experience trying to turn them, they don't. So we got to replace them because we need valves in the system to control and manage the water in the system. Everybody agreed, thought that was a great priority. And then about halfway through the year, that money got diverted to something that was, in my opinion, more visible, is something that was like siding on the clubhouse, which really didn't need new siding, yet it was visible. And people were like, we really need that. And it's like, well, we also really need a water system that works. But in talking to other folks, it was, well, that's not visible. We can't see the pipes. So it's really hard to convince people that they're not working. It's like, well, the easy way is that you don't have water. Then you really know it's not working.
When you brought this up, this really struck a chord with me, Fred, because there's so much of what we do in reliability is not clearly visible. I'll give an example. Talk about condo boards and home associations. We have 30-year-old sheds that are associated with the condos. Mm-hmm. So each condo unit has a corresponding shed. And the doors are 30 years old,
Mm-hmm.
and the doors look fine, except they're rotting from the inside.
Mm.
We know that because one of the doors we had a problem, and opened it up, and it's like sawdust. Um, and it's rotting, and very, very shortly, those doors are going to be a problem.
Yep.
Now, it's not as critical as water, but the failure was invisible. And this is a huge part of our work. Like the entire subject of reliability centered maintenance, RCM, hinges on things that are evident or not evident, things that are hidden, get more priority in terms of risk because you don't see them. And it's in this whole subject of make things visible as part of our business.
Right.
So hidden reliability is an interesting topic. So it resonated with me, and I'm glad we're giving it some airtime.
Well, the hard part is that making it visible to people that have uh, different priorities of and don't understand the mechanics of, well, if this doesn't work, and the attitude I've been running up against is, well, when it didn't work before, we just shut off the whole system and then they did the repair and we're back and we had no water for a day. I'm like, okay, that's great. If we don't happen to have a fire in the neighborhood at that day, you know, the
Yeah.
the consequences of not having water is not inconvenient if you're off at work, right? You don't really care whether there's water there, and you turn your tap on when you get home, and it spits out some air, and then it's fine. It seems like a very it's a minor inconvenience, yet the actual potential and risk and the accumulated damage to the system is invisible. It's like when you mentioned RCM, we're using vibration sensors and thermography and all kinds of other oil analysis as a way to gauge the status of the operation of a piece of equipment well before it fails. And that makes it visible to us. They're saying, all right, well, this one's really at the end of its life. It's got a lot of metal shavings in the oil. We got to replace it. As opposed to waiting for it to fail, then it's absolute total number one, all hands on deck, go fix it. RCM and a good practice of that is let's identify it before it causes the plant to go down and fix it on our own schedule. And I'm running into that attitude here as well. If if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I says, it is broke. It doesn't work.
And this is so much a part of our job. The my first RCM project, maintenance project, was with the Navy on submarines. And so I got a bunch of submarine engineers in the room. We're not on a submarine. We're actually in a conference room, but we're doing
in a different closed-in space.
Yes, we're doing a RCM project, and the project was on the blower motors inside a submarine. Now, if the blower motors, the air flow blower, if that fails, that's a problem when you're underwater.
Yeah,
because you need fresh air, obviously. So the question is, how do we maintain the blower motors? You can crawl through the vents if you're small enough, and you can fix the blower motor in real time in a submarine, but the system is down and there's problems with that. So they tried to time the repair. So we don't want to run to failure as the strategy, because that's a good strategy in some cases, but in this case, planned maintenance is a better strategy. So when the submarine is in for dry dock or fitting or just in port or whatever, then depending on the timing, you can then swap out the blower motor, is one strategy. But again, it's an invisible until it isn't.
Right.
And that's part of our job, is to deal with things that are not visible or that are hidden and make them visible to management, make them visible to in the prioritization process, like you were trying to do on your homeowners association.
The hard part is that it's part of it is I know too much.
Yeah.
It's if it's doing way too many FMEAs in my career of seeing potentials and severities of risks and or problems that occur and all those kinds of factors into it. And that's why we do preventative maintenance. That's why we do, basic proper design and all those kinds of things. And but I'm dealing with a whole bunch of accountants and nurses and I think there's a psychologist. There's a couple of doctors in the neighborhood. I mean, it's a mix of the general population, and there's a handful of people that get it. There's an architect that fully gets it. He's like, "Yeah, I've been doing, trying to do this for years." But it's finding because the technical explanation of corrosion and binding of a valve able to move or not, most people I can explain that to and they get it, but that's where the connection to, well, why is that a problem, drops apart, falls apart. And like
it is a problem, and it's a problem in communication. So why don't people see things the way we see them? Is the aspiration. And
Yeah.
and of course there's an answer to that. Like when you're talking as a reliability professional to management. Now, if the management is management in engineering, maybe they see the things you do. But if their management their background is finance or the background is, business, general business, they might not see the failure modes and the consequences the way you see them. So we have to learn how to communicate with people that don't see the things the way we see them. And there's no easy answer to that.
Well, I'm okay with somebody who's financially driven. Is like, we had the perfect case study the year I was on the board. Is the motor for the main pump that moved our water up the hill to the tanks failed. And we knew it was bad and knew that we needed to get replaced, but I couldn't get any traction to get a replacement pump in system there. It was too expensive. We didn't budget for it. It hasn't failed yet. This thing was shooting water across the room. It got some water up the tanks, but it was seals were bad. The guy managing, running the water system tried doing what he could with it, but he says, no, it's the seal has got nothing to seal against. So that's why it leaks, that kind of stuff. And finally the motor just completely died. And now we couldn't move water up the hill. So we had about a day and a half of water in the park. And so Tyler found a pump that would fit the existing system, or found a motor that would fit the existing system, drove 200 miles, paid 3 times as much so that he got it at the top of the list and he could take it home with him. Got it installed. Our tanks were down to about 20 minutes of water left, and then he started pumping again.
Oh, yeah. Well,
and everybody went, well, he fixed it.
He's a hero.
He fixed it. He's the hero. And I said, yeah. And we spent 3 times as much plus 2 days without enough water to put out a house fire. Oh, but he fixed it.
And it reminds me of one of the Deming quotes about heroes, because in most companies and frankly, in a lot of organizations, the people that put out fires, not to talk about California fires.
Yeah. And they're heroes too.
Yes, they're heroes, yes. And the people that put out fires in a company, that put out the visible problem, they're heroes. Yep. And management applauds them and the company applauds them. The people that prevent problems by scheduled maintenance or swapping out the motor before it fails, but it's achieved its useful life or whatever, those people are not heroes, because it's not visible. They just did a scheduled maintenance and there was no problem. Well, no problem is not
worthy celebration, unfortunately. Yeah, no, it was, oh, you can't do that. It's impossible. You can't spend $5,000 to replace that motor. There's too many other things we got to do. We got to do this, blah, 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 blah. A month later, it was perfectly fine to spend $15,000 to $20,000 to replace that motor.
Exactly. You're paying the higher cost of emergency repairs. You have the extra cost of the downtime, and that is so visible. So I think this is a very, very good topic, is how can we as reliability professionals or even um, knowledgeable people that serve on a board of directors, how can we communicate the need to prevent a problem before it becomes catastrophic?
Yeah. With people that are financially motivated or like uptime motivated in a factory, it's they often know the consequence of downtime, right?
Yeah.
It's like dollars per minute of downtime is common knowledge in some facilities. In the park, we just don't have water.
So what if, now this is hypothetical, what if in the example of the motor that, and let's say you knew that this motor needed to be replaced,
Mm-hmm.
but the $5,000 fee was high and you weren't convincing people. What if you presented to them the cost, the $15,000 cost that is going to happen? It's may not be imminent, but it is going to happen at some point. And then go try to do that trade-off as to is it better to pay 5,000 now or 15,000 in a couple of months?
Well, there was that approach, and what I got feedback on is, well, it's not broken, don't fix it. It was kind of the general approach to it. Is like, yeah, it's fiction, it's hypothetical. It'll cost that much later,
Yeah.
and so I've kept track of stories like that, and there's more than one that has been part of the litany of the consequence of deferring maintenance. And for some people, that's working. What I really need to do is make a slide deck or a set of movies about this stuff and just have it on
Yeah,
a constant
have
reel,
it in the queue, ready to go.
always going. But the there's turnover in the neighborhood, new people and stuff, and then there's things that there's their pet projects, and one of them has been a project that the community has done for years and years and years. We get a bunch of big dumpsters, big debris bins delivered, and for a weekend people could put all their trash in it, all the big stuff that wouldn't go in the regular trash service. And it has the benefit of cleaning up the neighborhood, of getting rid of fire hazard type stuff, and improving getting rid of this debris stacked up around people's homes. And it's been wildly successful. Well, the first complaint I got when it wasn't scheduled this year, which I had nothing to do with, was, well, it costs me $500 to take a load to the dump. And it said, why do you think us paying for dumpsters so you can throw it away for free is a good deal? And you're like, well, it's good for the community. It's like, no, it's good for you. I get that. It's convenient and all the other stuff. But what has happened is people have decided to, well, we get dumpsters every year, so I don't need to go to the dump. I don't need to rent a truck or borrow a truck. I just pile it up here until the dumpsters come, and then I take it down there. And it turns out there's 148 homes in the park, and there's only about 20 homes that participate in getting rid of stuff through the dumpsters. So I'm looking at the finances of this guy. I could replace a valve in our water system. A good part of the cost of doing that, I could buy the valve and we hire a plumber to change it. Yet that argument is flying flat on people that feel like, I personally save a lot of money if the dumpsters are here. So you got to have dumpsters. Whereas if we don't have water, well, that's just inconvenient for a day or two.
What comes to mind, Fred, is a culture. I've worked with companies. Apple's a good example that has a culture of prevention.
Mm-hmm.
And I've worked with other companies that have a culture of fixing. And they wait until there's a problem and then everybody rallies around it.
Yeah.
Of course, you have to fix problems, but prevention there's a lot of good business reasons to prevent problems, but it has to be a culture. It has to be part of the management, the employees. They think that way. They understand the value, and it's not overnight to create a culture. And your homeowners association probably has a culture of that you're dealing with, and that has to be changed at some point. And maybe the slide deck would help do that.
Yeah, no, it's going to be some more work to sort out how to do it. And I think the overall culture is, well, somebody else will deal with that.
Yes. Or can we just postpone that until next month?
That's right. Well, that's inconvenient. Let's not do that till next year.
Right.
And
Exactly.
yeah, deferred maintenance is a whole nother topic. Is that it just seems to be so much more fun to defer the maintenance rather than actually do anything.
Well, and that's what struck me on this subject is so much of what we do is talking about or dealing with hidden issues
Yep.
in reliability because it's not always evident. And so we have to be very good at communication skills. And you and I've talked about this for a long time, is we have to be very good in communication skills to be able to explain to people why a priority is what it is and why things have to be dealt with, even though you can't see them.
Yep. Yep. You got to get more pictures and diagrams and circles and arrows and
That's right.
A pitch that goes after the various motivations different people have.
I would love to ask our listeners if you have an experience that you could share of something that works or helps to highlight the importance of prevention or the importance of making things visible or how you go about explaining why something needs to be done, even though it isn't urgent at this minute.
Oh yeah, I need some hints and tips on it. I definitely do. I know in practice, in my consulting work, it's like I usually can figure out an angle on that. But at the end of the day, I don't have the consequence, right? They can listen to me or not. I get paid and I leave. Where here, I live here, so it's a little bit more personal. So it complicates it a bit. But yeah, I'd love to hear some ideas or success stories because there's got to be some out there. But head over to accendoreliability.com/go/SOR. And there's a couple of ways to get in touch with us through that page. Carl and I and the other hosts of the show are available on LinkedIn and our about pages on the site. So plenty of ways for you to get in touch. And if you have a question, related to this or not related to it, we always are looking forward to those too. So Carl, we'll see what comes in the inbox in the next couple of days, and we'll go from there. And we'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon, Fred.
Take care, Carl. Thanks for listening to Speaking of Reliability. We invite you to join the conversation. If you have a question or a topic that you think we should discuss in a future show, please let us know. You can find a comment box below the episode show notes, or just leave a note as part of a review on iTunes.